Welcome back everyone, it's Mags, here to talk about a relatively recent game for once. I know, rare. See, a few months ago, Nipponichi Software, and subsequently NIS America in the West, published a new game that was released overseas on March 26 of this year. Notice I said published, not developed. This game has a little bit of a storied history, and I mean that quite literally. In 2022, the president of NIS and original game designer of Disgaea, Sohei Niikawa, left the company. Then in 2025, he announced that he was going to be working on games independently under his newly formed company called Super Niche. In the meantime, a new up-and-coming author sprouted up named Roman Kitayama, who had been working on some writing projects of his own, mainly in the form of web novels. One of said projects was a web novel called Etrange Overlord. Back over at Super Niche, Niikawa announced his new company's debut video game. It was called Etrange Overlord. Niikawa revealed that he had been Roman Kitayama all along, and one of the reasons he left NIS was to explore these projects that he wanted to make. And in the case of Etrange Overlord, he actually wrote the story with the idea of adapting it into a game from the jump, and that's exactly what he did. So Etrange Overlord is a video game adaptation of a web novel written by Sohei Niikawa, former president of NIS, under his own company, Super Niche. And before I get comments, I'm not just being pretentious, Etrange is literally how they pronounce it in the game, and so that is what is in my head. It's based on the French word for strange, after all. Along with Super Niche, he also got Broccoli and Gem Drops to help out. I mainly know the latter from Kogan Sword of Rewind, but most are probably more familiar with their work on one of Star Ocean 2's remakes, Second Story R. And of course, NIS themselves jumped in to publish and distribute it. Side note, as of writing this, Super Niche does have one other project they've announced that they're working on, called Demon's Night Fever, and I'm very excited to see how that turns out. No release date as of yet. Etrange Overlord follows the titular Etrange Rosenberg. She is part of the royal family of Rosenbergs who rule over the kingdom of Edelstein. Or rather, she was until she was falsely executed by her own family, specifically her fiancé no less, who has the power to make those calls on account of being the prince. In life, Etrange lived in constant discrimination for having dark hair and proficiency in the dark arts, both qualities that a terrible overlord in the past also had, and so they have come to be seen as evil. And to top off that life full of discrimination and ridicule, she was framed for hatching a plot to assassinate the royal family, and was put to the guillotine. Heaven and hell exist in this world, but Etrange did not end up in heaven, even though that's clearly where she belonged, especially since she wasn't even guilty of the plot, but rather Etrange ended up in hell. Yet she is so strong, both in magical power and in willpower, that she's always determined to make the most of her current situation, even in hell. Etrange's one true desire and goal in life is to live as comfortably as she can while eating sweets. That's literally it, and I love her for that. She's just like me for real. Despite her royal background and seemingly frivolous life goals, she is as headstrong as they come. She is completely committed to living life on her own terms, no matter the hand she's dealt. If she wants something, she just takes it. She is the embodiment of you can just do things, but not through any kind of abuse of power. Importantly, she still cares for other people, and is quick to call out wrongdoing when she sees it. She'll stand up for herself and for others as she sees fit, no matter who she's up against, with all the confidence in the world. Meanwhile, back up on the mortal coil, it becomes apparent from the get-go that the mastermind behind the fake assassination plot and Etrange's execution is none other than the prince's new fiancée and self-proclaimed honorary sister to Etrange, Angelina. Like Etrange, Angelina just wants to live comfortably on her own terms, but her methods come completely at the expense of others, earned through lies and deception. The story sets up this parallel early on, and it's one of the main things about it that hooked me immediately. The other main draw for me narratively is just Etrange herself. The writing in this game is extremely entertaining, and a huge part of that is how good Etrange is as a protagonist. She's equal parts admirable and funny, always matter-of-factly doing the most insane and reckless things without recognizing how insane and reckless they are, because they are completely justified in her mind. That's just the kind of person she is. And yeah, her logic is sound. How are you gonna argue? Oh, we can't destroy the enemy's big, undefeatable tank? Hijack it and take it for ourselves instead. Sure, why not? She turns any situation into a beneficial one. In fact, that ends up as your main base. Hell wants to punish Etrange for her crimes. She knows she didn't commit any, so she just says, nah, and consistently fights back against all of Hell. The thing about Etrange is that she is completely fair. If she did commit some sin, she would lie down and take the punishment properly, but she absolutely refuses to take a punishment she doesn't deserve. A big part of her character is that she does not make compromises. If she smells BS, she will go to the ends of the earth to strike it down. What really makes it believable and drives it home for me is how that even applies to deep societal societal issues. She has a strong moral compass. At one point, she decides she wants weapons to defend herself with. One of her followers that she's managed to amass points out that the biggest armory in all of hell is nearby and they can just buy from there. Her reaction? She goes on a commentary about how armories are just war profiteering, and their only allegiance is to the suffering of others since that's how they get their money. So to her, the only answer is that they just raid them and steal their entire armory for themselves. That is how Etrange does business. Even the other residents of Hell are constantly baffled by how calmly she does all of this stuff, to the point where one of the running gags is that they don't even believe she's a normal human being. She must be a demon. She must be one of the most ferocious demons of all time. But that could not be further from the truth. The discrimination she faced makes her more empathetic, and she doesn't hesitate to tell people to be themselves, and you can even see her make conscious efforts towards herself to not think differently about others for undeserved reasons. She's just such a strongly written character with a clear, solid set of morals and code of conduct. You know exactly what she's all about, and she's endlessly entertaining to watch. Of course, all the other characters are good too. They have their charms, and I like the party as a band of comrades. But Etrange is clearly the star of the show here. She only formed this group because the others admire her and want to follow her, and in turn, they each personally affect her in different ways emotionally. They really become genuine friends. I really didn't expect the narrative to be as captivating as it is, and I'm glad to be able to say that it stays that way right up until the end, and has a beautiful ending. There's one particularly unique feature of this game's presentation that people may have heard about, and that's musical numbers. One of the first projects Niikawa worked on for NIS was Rhapsody: A Musical Adventure, which was released all the way back in 1998. It's a super charming RPG that featured a bunch of musical numbers in its narrative with fun full-length songs. Etrange Overlord pays homage to that by doing the same thing, but here it's to a much lesser extent. There's a longer song towards the beginning as like your introduction to the game, but everything from there on out comes in short 10 to 20 second bursts, nothing like the full-length songs you might be expecting. They're really just there to add some flavor to the cutscenes and give the game some charm, and they do that. They're enjoyable, but if that aspect was a big selling point to you, since it was part of the marketing, then you may be disappointed. But still, they're nice to have. So, how's the actual gameplay? Etrange Overlord is like a beat-em-up where battles focus on defeating enemies in real time. You can bring up to 4 characters in battle at once if the stage permits it, and each character has a different fighting style. You can run around the map, hit A to dash, and B to attack. Very simple controls. You can only control one character at a time, but you can switch who you're controlling on the fly with the left and right D-pad buttons. The characters you're not controlling at any given moment will continue to act on their own. There's a light tactics system, emphasis on light, where you can press the right bumper to change what those characters focus on, between completing the stage objectives, just killing enemies, or using devices, which are special objects on the map. Whenever a character dies, you can go up to them and hold X to revive them. Character loadouts are pretty varied, which made me want to experiment at least a little bit with each one. Some use close quarters combat with swords or claws, some are long range characters with bows or guns. Every character just has their one attack that they dish out, but there are a lot of characters, many of who I don't even want to show off for spoiler reasons. You get new characters pretty frequently, especially in the first half of the game. Where the combat gets the rest of its variety and hecticness is the lane system. Stages will feature preset paths where power-ups and other helpful items will randomly float down. There are attack buffs, shields that protect you from damage, healing items, and straight up bombs that you can hold and carry around to then throw at enemies. There are also special moves. Each character has a powerful special attack, but you can only use it by collecting it from a lane. Everything that comes down the lane has some kind of limit to it, which causes you to frequently be on the lookout to replenish them. Attack buffs only last for a certain number of individual attacks. They do stack if you collect more, but only up to a certain amount. The strength of the buff is determined by how many attacks you have left to use it with, so stacking more makes you stronger, and your strength will slowly diminish as you attack until it's eventually back down to normal. A shield will completely protect you from one attack, and there's a cap on how many of those you can hold at once too. You can only ever hold one special attack at once, so you can't spam them, unless you strategically stay very near a lane and get lucky. That's totally something you can do. And you don't hold healing items at all, they just heal whatever character collected it on the spot. So you're basically always scrambling for whatever helpful items you can take advantage of on the lanes. On top of all that, there are also devices. Devices are super special objects that float down lanes that you can interact with in some way, so they're always on the move, and they add more strategy in how you take advantage of them. There are straight up turrets that you can use to mow down enemies. There are these bells that spawn healing circles around them that heal you over time as long as you're inside of it, so you're really going to want to think about those too, especially if you get in a pinch. A lot of devices require energy though, so you don't abuse them too much. Energy is yet another special item that appears on lanes, so you have to physically pick it up and throw it into a device to charge it, which can be relatively timely, so you gotta make it worth it. All that, combined with keeping an eye on the well-being of every character who's acting on their own, make these battles feel very busy. If a character is about to die, you can switch to them and search for healing items on the lanes, or just wait for them to die and go revive them. There's also one character whose special attack is to heal characters around her, so that's another option. The franticness is what makes this game feel unique. The stages are really short, so the difficulty and focus is more on how well you can manage everything going on, especially if you want to accomplish some of the optional objectives that stages have. Also, every stage has a time limit, which is usually pretty generous, but still just adds that much more pressure. Stages usually only last a few minutes or so, but the lanes and devices do a good job at shaking things up. Even then though, there are other ways that the stages vary as well. One of the big things is the actual objective of each stage. It's not always just kill all the enemies. Oftentimes it's something more strategic. One type of stage that frequently pops up is a race between you and the enemies to collect a certain amount of special objects floating around the lanes and drop them into your respective boxes. Whoever gets the specified amount first wins. You have to balance bum rushing for objects for yourself between defeating enemies so they don't overwhelm the area and take more objects of their own. There are also capture point stages where you need to stay in a designated area for a certain amount of time to capture it. But any enemies who are also in that area slow down your progress, and if enough are there, they completely reverse it, so you gotta defend them. Most of the time there are multiple of these areas that you have to have completely captured at the same time to win. There's some nice character interaction in most of the stages in the form of automatic conversations that play in the background as the characters fight. The problem with that for non-Japanese speakers is that the game only has Japanese voices. Usually I'm not one to care about that at all. I like hearing the original performances just as much as a good English dub, but this game does not expect you to focus on reading dialogue during a stage with how much you have to focus on already. They're all voiced, so I feel like it was really intended for you to listen to, which is going to be a problem when you don't speak the language. I wanted so bad to read all the conversations because the interactions are good and I like these characters, but it totally does screw you up in stages. Apart from the main objective, each stage has two optional objectives. They're things that are supposed to make the stage a bit more challenging, like not letting any allies get KO'd, or finishing the stage in under a certain amount of time. They can be completed individually. As long as any of them have been accomplished, they'll be registered as complete. All these objectives, main and optional alike, are considered missions, quote-unquote, of their own. The main incentive for completing them is how leveling up works. Your characters don't level up in the traditional sense. Instead, clearing missions increases your happiness level, which is like one blanket level for your whole party. Happiness level gives you rewards every time it's increased, like money and materials, as well as increases the maximum levels you can upgrade certain things to. You move between stages in the main overworld map. You pretty quickly get a vehicle to speed things up, which makes moving around here unnecessarily fun. You can dash to go faster, which will also destroy objects, so you can just mow down everything here for the hell of it. But there are also side missions you can tackle here, which really are just extra cutscenes that are called missions for some reason, in the same vein that the optional objectives of the main missions are also just missions. They're nice though, some of them are just extra lighthearted banter between the main cast to strengthen their characters, which I always love. There's some good stuff here. And some of them are actually plot relevant, diving into some of what's going on back up on the Mortal Coil, which provides context for some things that pop up later in the main story, so it's definitely a good idea to look at all of them as they appear. And then there are also cooking side missions, which again are just cutscenes, but they're dedicated to the main cast cooking a special dish for Etrange, with some more charming dialogue and banter, and viewing these scenes will unlock that dish for cooking. Cooking is one of the handful of mechanics and functions you can utilize in the hub world. You can actually move your point of view from outside the vehicle to inside the vehicle anytime you want on the map, which will let you walk around inside as Etrange, and that's where you'll find the rest of the cast hanging out and all your extra facilities. Clearing stages will net you money, called darks in this game, as well as special materials. Both of these things can be used for all these facilities. Materials come in three categories: food, weapon, and lane. Food, of course, is used for cooking. You can cook any dish you've unlocked for a passive effect on your party, which lasts for one battle before wearing off. Some recipes also become available to buy in the shop as you progress through the game. The only other thing you can buy in the shop is some basic materials, no weapons or armor or anything like that. The other two categories of material are related to two types of upgrades, one being weapon materials for weapon or character upgrades. Since characters don't level up, this is your way of making them stronger. Every character can only be upgraded 4 times, where they start at level 1 and can be upgraded to level 5, so every upgrade is impactful. You can definitely feel the change in strength, which makes saving up and purchasing upgrades really satisfying. Upgrades don't just affect damage output, they can also improve other aspects of attacking. Ranged characters who shoot projectiles can get additional projectiles per attack, for example. Overall range and attack speed are other common ones. I was always checking in here to see if I could upgrade anyone. The third category of materials is for lane augmentation, which improves the effect of lane items. You can spend lane materials to make attack buffs last longer, make healing items heal more health, make special attacks and bombs do more damage, give bombs more range, and a host of other things. This is also where you can increase the caps of some lane items, like being able to hold more shields at once. But those upgrades aren't all automatically applied even when you buy them. You need to manually customize which upgrades you want to apply, which is limited by arbitrary lane points. Applying any of these upgrades uses up a certain amount of lane points each, so you need to choose carefully. You can customize your lane upgrade loadout anytime. Your maximum lane points increase as your happiness level goes up, allowing you to apply stronger or more lane upgrades. There's a pretty good amount of things you can upgrade for this game, which makes grinding for materials worthwhile, especially because level 5 characters can be pretty OP. Every level of upgrade requires more of the same types of material than the last upgrade did, as well as one additional material that's harder to find. So the material costs of upgrading really accumulate, which is where dispatching comes in. That's the last major facility you can use in this game. Essentially, you can send your party members to certain areas of the map to passively scout for materials. Each area gives you different materials. You can still use characters in battle while they're out, it affects nothing combat-wise, so you're meant to use this everywhere and anywhere you can at all times to passively rake stuff in. Time passes by clearing battles, and each party member has a different amount of battles you must clear before they come back with their findings. Each character has a specialty for which category of materials they actually find, but they also have an additional passive ability that they can apply that can affect the dispatching itself, or even other areas of the game. For example, one character has a passive that discounts everything in the shop by 30% wherever he's dispatched to, which means if you dispatch him somewhere and physically move to that part of the overworld, then things in the shop will be cheaper. Likewise, there's one that doesn't let cooking buffs expire in the area they're dispatched to. At first, you can only dispatch 1 unit to a place at a time, but raising happiness level gradually increases that to a max of 3. With all of these passives and the amount of materials there are to get, there's a satisfying amount of tinkering you can do with this to be more efficient with your time and resources, which I found to be a huge strength in late to post game. This game is significantly longer than it first lets on. I was really afraid at first that there wouldn't be enough content to really start using these systems and upgrades to their full extent, but I was very pleasantly surprised to learn that that is not the case. You can immediately see that the first major area, Hell, has 6 worlds. I don't want to spoil a ton about what the other content is because it does come as a surprise and I think it's really cool. It's been so hard choosing all my footage for this video. But I will say that the game is in reality about twice as long as this. Overall, it's still on the shorter side, being around a 10 to 12 hour run through of the story, but it's a super nice experience that uses its systems well. There's one last mechanic though that I feel brings this experience down a bit. There's a revolt mechanic. Since Etrange is basically inadvertently gaining power in Hell with her band of followers, there are going to be residents who aren't happy. On the dispatch screen, you can see what the general discontent level is for each area of the game, and when it gets high enough, a revolt will happen. It kind of just happens automatically over time from what I can tell, no real rhyme or reason, and I didn't pick up on any way to get discontent back down aside from actually quelling a revolt when one does happen. The closest thing you can do is use some special characters whose dispatch passives are to prevent it from going up in the place they're dispatched to. When you dispatch characters, they each have a certain % chance to put down a revolt automatically should one happen wherever they're dispatched. The chances all stack together when there are multiple characters in one place. If that chance pulls through and they successfully put down the revolt, you get some rare materials. If not though, if the revolt is successful, one stage in that area will be taken back over by the enemy, which places a negative dispatch effect on that area, such as not being able to bring back materials from there. To get the effect off, you just have to go clear that stage again. Just needing to do that occasionally was a real pace breaker, and it feels like it completely gets in the way of properly managing your dispatching. Some friction is good, but it already feels like there's some good natural friction in deciding what your priorities are when you dispatch, given your limitations versus the plethora of options you theoretically have. So trying to prevent revolts on top of that feels like it just throws a wrench in everything. But at least the materials you get for actually putting down a revolt are pretty nice, since it's usually a high amount of the rarer ones. and those are important if you're looking for the full platinum completion. I like to talk about the completionist aspect in these videos too, since they're usually some of the less documented parts of games, and I just like doing it, partly because it allows me to learn and experience more about the game than I otherwise would. There are a lot of achievements in this game, but most of them are for frivolous tasks, either relating to story progression or for doing things that need no explaining, like use a special attack 300 times or spend 1,000,000 darks at the shop. That's like 90% of the achievements. Naturally, there's one for completing every mission, which includes not only the main objectives, but also the optional objectives of every stage, and all the side mission cutscenes. And there are a few surprisingly grindy ones, at least compared to the rest of the game, and those are for fully enhancing every character's weapons, which means getting everyone to level 5, and maxing out every lane enhancement. This requires a lot of material grinding and a lot of money. For the more common materials, you can buy them at the shop, and while they appear cheap, the sheer amount that you need from every level of every character really adds up. You could have millions of darks by the end of the story like I did and still be hurting for cash. That one dispatch unit I mentioned that discounts shop items is very helpful here. The rarer materials you need for higher level enhancements are ones you'll only be able to get by dispatching, or by quelling revolts, but that's just a nice bonus whenever it happens to happen. Each area has a number of materials you can bring back, and every time rewards are reaped from that area, it's random which of those materials you get. The most control you have over that is using characters who specialize in the specific type of material you want, of which there will still be multiple possibilities for. Here's a crazy dispatch effect that 2 characters in the game have. Any other character dispatched in an area alongside this one automatically matches their number of battles required to bring back rewards. And of course the number in question is only 1. So this means you can choose anybody alongside of one of these characters, and they'll always bring back materials after every single battle, which makes it really easy to lock in on some specific materials you want. It still takes quite a bit of grinding though. The stages you clear to progress dispatches can be strategically chosen to get even more of the materials you want from, or for the amount of money they give you, but personally, for time's sake, I just used whatever stage was the fastest to clear, which was 1-2. There's also an achievement for cooking 50 times. I hardly ever cooked in the game, so I basically had to do all of this at once, and there's a cutscene that needs to load in and then out every single time, even if you skip it, so there's that to look forward to sitting through. Etrange Overlord is a pretty short game, but it is chock full of charm. The story is great, and I really love all the characters, especially Etrange herself. It was very clearly made on a budget, but there was so much love and heart poured into this that it still shines all the same. The gameplay, even though seemingly simple, is still satisfying and felt pretty unique in its franticness. The game does retail at $50, which is pretty steep, but hopefully this video has helped you decide whether or not that would be worth it to you. And no joke, in the middle of recording this voiceover, I saw a post on social media about a statement Niikawa made that actually acknowledges the price, and he says that he wants the game to go on sale pretty frequently, so there you go. I adored this game even more than I thought I would, which only makes me look forward to Super Niche's other future projects just that much more. If you want to see me cover more NIS games, that's like half of what I do on the channel, so be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. I've been Mags, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.